Well, thanks for coming. I'm so impressed that you all came here this early in the morning, because most of my clients don't start working till like 11 o'clock. So it's really great to see designers up this early. So thanks very much, and thanks to everybody, all the sponsors and everybody. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to try to talk for 20 minutes. I could talk for hours and hours. So I take questions, I guess, while I'm talking and as well as afterwards. So, and I sometimes bring up topics that you might not agree with, and I like the debate, so that's good. The one thing you should know is that I used to be a designer. So I went to design school. I know what kerning is. So, you know, you're talking to somebody who loves design. And I was not good at it. I kind of sucked at it. So I was trying to figure out what I could do, and I really liked the business world of design. So I ended up staying with design, but just on the business end. So I get to do what I really love, which is fantastic, and work with really cool people like you guys. So it's great. And I get to wear jeans to work. So, okay. Okay, so that's who I am. Okay. So this is my favorite expression, which is most of the problems have a lot to do with the leadership of your firm. So I'm going to talk a lot about more firms, and just even if you're one person, this all applies. So you can ask me questions that apply to you later on. I'm going to try to talk to all your needs, but for the most part, what I like to say is the fish stinks from the head down, which is most of the problems that you have are your fault. It really is. You know, it's like you can blame all the clients, they're all assholes, you know, but really, a lot of it has to do with if you're having problems with your staff, you haven't done the right things to manage them well. You haven't done performance reviews to tell them they're not doing well. There's lots of things you can do to improve what your problems are. So I always tell people when they have problems or when they have issues with why aren't I winning enough proposals or why is this client being a pain in the neck, look to yourself and say how can I better manage or how can I do this in a different way. Just a personal example, I have a 16-year-old daughter. Her personality completely changed overnight. She's a teenager now. And I'm like, oh no, I don't know who this evil child is. And I was thinking, okay, if she was a client, how do I change my behavior, right, to work with her? And for the most part, it's working out. We're fighting a whole lot less. So it's a good strategy, personal and professional. Okay, so I like to look at, and this really applies to one-person firms as well. There's lots of different roles in a design firm or in a creative business. And a lot of times, most people who start a creative business do it because they love design, or they love photography, or they love just what they do. But they really aren't good at business. So I really try to point out that if you own a business, and this doesn't mean you get paid hourly. It means you have a business, right? You work for clients. You might work out of your home, but you have a business. You're a professional. Sorry. And so there's very core roles. The first role is that you have to be the business leader. This is the visionary. How do you lead the business that you're doing? Whether it's one person or a larger firm, you create the vision. And if you don't have a vision, you're going to let the clients drive who you are. So you need to have the visionary. You need the creative leader. That's all the things that everybody loves to do. The new business leader, you need to get business, right? You need to get all the clients. You need to figure out what kinds of work you want to bring in and who you are. The studio project staff traffic manager. This is sometimes 5 different roles, but this is the operations role, and this is kind of the role that a lot of people forget. This is the foundation of a good business. This is the person that writes the proposals, that manages your team, manages clients, makes sure budgets and schedules are met, right? This is the stuff that designers hate. But you absolutely need that, and if you have your own business, you have to fulfill every single one of these roles. And if one of these roles is missing, you're going to fail as a business. So you need every single one of these. Financial manager. This doesn't mean it's your wife or your spouse or your boyfriend, you know. It means it's a professional bookkeeper and a professional accountant. Somebody who is managing your money. So the number one mistake I see every firm have, they do not have a bookkeeper or an accountant. Spend the money, get somebody to help you out. Even if you're great at money, that's not what you should be doing. You need to have somebody who's managing your finances and not just doing your taxes. Really helping you plan, can you afford to hire people? You know, how do I grow? How much money do I need to save to own a space? Things like that. So if you have an accountant that's just doing taxes, they're the wrong accountant. You really need somebody who's an advisor, a trusted ally. An administrator. So this is emptying the garbage, you know, sending out FedEx packages. You have to do that stuff, right? You need somebody to do that, and usually it's the owner. And you shouldn't forget about that. The creative team, so those are the people, the designers that are supporting you. And the production programmers and executors. All the people that are doing the stuff, getting it done. So if you have to have every single one of these roles to make a good team. So I always like to look at organizational structures. And this is just an example of one that was bad. So this is a client I was working with, and I won't mention names, I'll try not to. And you can see the principal kind of had his hands in every single pot there was. He was just supervising everybody, and he had lots of all these people doing client work. So he had this new business manager who was supposed to bring in new business, but he was doing the new business, so they were very confusing. Then they had the junior account manager. I don't even know what that person did. I think that they did packing boxes. I swear that's all they did. They had an account manager who was supposed to manage the clients, but not bring in new business. Didn't understand that. Creative director, obviously that was a clear role, but he was the creative director. He was working directly with this team without the creative director's involvement. So you can see there's just lots of confusion. They had lots of non-billable people as well. So we had the junior account manager, new business manager, and the bookkeeper, and the receptionist. 5 people that were not billable to the client. That's a bad business model. And then you had very, very flat creative structure. So we had a lot of people at the bottom that were doing programming and production, but they were called designers. And they were very, very frustrated because they were called designers. They wanted to be designers, yet they were doing mechanicals. So I came in, we worked with him to streamline the structure. This actually looks much streamlined than what it turned out to be. So basically, my general point of view, and you'll hear this later, is that the principal should really be the visionary. His primary or her primary role is to really lead the vision of the company and build client relationships. In a small company, you do not need account managers. You need somebody who's just going to manage the business and manage the client relationships. And that's what he should be doing. And he was fabulous at it. He was just amazing at it. So I said, you do what you're great at. Stay away from the creative direction. Your team hates you. And because his team hated him, I gave him an assistant. I said, because he was a really bad time manager, he just was bad at all that stuff. So I said, you can have an assistant who can do kind of all that stuff, not manage your team, but kind of manage your daily schedule. Manage your speaking, do all that. And he had a bookkeeper who was handling his finances. I kept the bookkeeper. And then I changed it to have a studio manager, somebody who was doing all that stuff I was talking about, all the operational things. And managing the team and managing the clients. But they weren't strategists, like account managers are more strategists. This was just somebody that was just going to manage the studio and the clients. Kind of the bad guy of the studio. The art director, you didn't need a creative director because he was the creative director. Except he had the art director in between. And then he had much more structured staff. Obviously, this looks more beautiful than it actually turned out, but he had trouble letting go. But just to give you a sense of what you should be doing. Okay, so I also think you should just look at who, if you have staff, or if you're working in a large firm, or even a small firm, you really should figure out who works with the clients. Whenever I interview clients, they're always very confused about, I never know who to call. Who's the person I talk to about money? Who's the person I talk to if I'm having problems with a design? So I like to create a map like this about who interacts with who and who has ownership of different responsibilities. This is just an example. It's not a recommendation for every firm. Every firm is different. And you're going to hear this a lot. One of the best practice I always recommend for everything, for proposals, for new business, for staff management, for anything, is customize. And there's not one-stop solution. If you ever meet a consultant that tells you, here's the way I think all firms should work, fire them. Because every firm is different. Every firm principal is different. You each are individuals. You have different strengths and weaknesses. You cannot create one structure or one proposal that looks like you. You have to create something that sounds like you and is meant for the clients. So I got off topic. Okay, so I don't know if anybody knows Kiss Me on Polish, the design firm. So Agnieszka is my favorite client, give me the other clients in the audience. So she sent me this. It was from a bike shop. I just love this. When I price, I always think about the aggravation factor. And I say, well, usually add 10% for every aggravation factor. So if the client doesn't return your calls, add 10%. If the client curses you out, add 50%. So I just love this one. I think it's really funny. Okay, so I'm moving on to estimates and proposals. I'm just going to kind of touch best practices in all the areas I consult on, just to give you something, it's a little food for thought, little germs of seeds. Okay, so the first thing I believe, and this is where you guys might argue with me, is that estimates and proposals are very different than contracts. They are two separate documents. If you have your terms and conditions inside the estimate, then the client's going to focus on the terms and conditions. It's going to be in like little small print. They're going to be like, ooh, I got to read this. And that's going to prevent the relationship from moving forward. So there's exceptions to everything I say, but that said, try never to put your terms in the proposal. You want the clients, the proposal is meant to build the before the estimate's written, you should build the relationship. So the estimate is not the only marketing tool. It's not the one that sells you to the clients, but it's the one that seals the deal. You know, they have loved you before. You've built a relationship with them. You've met them in person. You've done everything you can for them to trust you. So the estimate is just kind of a formality to say, here, this is what we're going to do, and here's our fees. So the ultimate goal of an estimate or a proposal, and you know, you can use different words. I don't really care what they're called, budgets, estimates, proposals, doesn't matter. But they're very different than contracts. Contracts are the terms and conditions. And okay, I know you can all hate this, but not 9-point. For us old people, 9-point is too tiny and we can't read it. So it has to be at least 10-point and up for us old folks. Okay, so estimates and contracts are very different. Contracts are terms and conditions, legal stuff, how much you're going to pay us, what the usage rights are. There are some exceptions. In this estimates and proposals, you don't want the client to have any surprises. So if there's some unique parameter to that project that's different than most relationships, then put it in the estimate. So if you mark up expenses, which you all should, put that in the proposal. Say that we're marking up expenses. So anything that could be a red flag for the client, you want them to talk to them up front. You don't want to hide that stuff. And so that once you've gotten them to agree to the estimate, the contract is such an easier sell. They're like, okay, we're going to work with you, so we're just going to sign the contract. And if they don't agree with the terms, which they shouldn't, their job is to read the terms. That's why it should be in 10-point, not in 9-point or 8-point. You know, let them read it. You want them not to involve their lawyers. You want them to understand it. And contracts should be user-friendly. They should be written that it sounds like you just were talking to them. So not the shalls and the whereofs. Fire all your lawyers. You don't need lawyers. Lawyers muck things up. You don't really, the point of contracts is not to protect you in court. I know lawyers are going to kill me for saying this. What the contract is meant for is to protect the relationship while you're working on them. So you don't ever have to go to court. So if it's legal, it's going to scare the bejesus out of clients. They're going to send it to the lawyers. They're not going to sign it. By the time you get the contract, the project's over, right? So you want a contract that's signed before the relationship starts. And the way you get that signed is if it's in user-friendly language. It has very obvious conditions. Don't put in the confidentiality clauses and the liability clauses, because you know what? If they want you to have those clauses, they're going to send you their contract anyway. Put in the clauses that matter to you. So usage is a big one. What's your payment schedule? How long are you going to store files? Things like that. Really important stuff that usually you get into trouble with later on. Ask the clients right questions. So this is the big thing. I love this from designers. I don't know why this is about you guys, but you don't like asking questions. You ask questions about strategy and target audience. Like, that's really important stuff, right? But that's important stuff after you have the relationship. What you really need to know is, what do you need from me? And you have to ask the right questions. And I hear this all the time from designers. So I'll ask them a question like, oh, do you know who your competitors are? Well, I assume, that's the word I hate. Don't ever say that word if you work with me, I assume. Don't assume anything. Ask the clients. And if you have to call them back more than once, you can do that. I don't know, there's some rule out there that you're not supposed to call clients more than once. Forget that rule. You can call them again. But try to ask them questions in 2 or 3 phone calls. So questions that I think are the most important questions is, you want to know what the project parameters are. So push them to help define the project. So you get a lot of clients to say, I just need a website, right? Well, what kind of website? Should it be e-commerce? Do you want to have CMS? What size site do you want to have? And they might say, I don't know, that's what I looked for you for. And that's true, right? They need you for the expertise. So then you help them define it. Or you say, let's start with a phase 1, and I'll charge you for me to help you define it. Right? And if you then work with me afterwards, I'll apply some of that fee to the project. So always try to be paid for your upfront strategic thinking. So ask things like, if they say, I need a brochure, well, how many pages is the brochure? These are silly questions, but you really need to know this to price. And a lot of things you can say is, look, if I'm competing against people, we should all be competing apples to apples. So let's come up with common ground by which we're all going to bid, so you can at least have something to compare against. Ask what the client will provide. I know this seems like an obvious one, but nowadays clients think designers do everything, and we do. We're writers, we're programmers, we do signage, we do all videos. Designers are not only one thing anymore. So clients just assume you can do a lot of stuff. So you have to ask them what they expect they will provide and what you will provide. Because a lot of times they'll be wanting you to write the content or provide high-level editorial thinking or write taglines or you do SEO, all kinds of things that designers are now getting into. Big one. What other firms are you working with? So how many other firms? You always should ask how many firms you're competing against. There's nothing wrong with asking that question. They might not answer, but there's nothing wrong with asking. So if you hear like anything above 5 other competitors, the chance of you winning that is going to be less. So then you have to make a decision whether you want to take on the project or not. And if they say to you 20 firms, I would really leave as quickly as you can. And you should ask them who you're competing against. There's nothing wrong with saying, can you name the names? I would really love to know, because the reason why I'd love to know is I want to tell you what makes me different. So you can actually customize your proposal against who your competitors are. Are you bidding against a PR firm or somebody's nephew, or an in-house team? Ask. And a lot of times the clients are going to give you the answer. You'll be surprised. Or sometimes they'll be, stupid and put it in the emails. Have you seen that where you get emails from, yeah. I always love that one. Clients are not always the smartest. And if they don't want to tell you, that's fine. You don't have to push them. You can say, well, what types of firms? And they'll always answer that. So if it's a freelancer, is it somebody local? Is it somebody that's overseas? Is it whatever? Is it their nephew or niece or whatever? So always ask who you're competing against and how many firms. This is a good one. What is the selection criteria? So ask them, well, what's going to make you decide to work with a firm? So this is when they start bringing up things like size. Size is this really tricky area because most of us are all small firms. And sometimes we're bidding against really huge firms. So we want to know, is size an important thing? If it's not, then don't mention it to them. Don't bring up your size unless they bring it up. But it's good to know if they say something like, we want to make sure you have enough capacity. That means it's a size issue, and you have to approach that in your proposal. Deal with it head on. So ask that question, what the approval process is, what the level of hierarchy is, are you working with the key decision makers? Ask them the approval process, because that's going to affect how many revisions, right? And how many presentations you need to make. So if you're not going to work with the key decision maker, you'll need to know, I'm going to have to build in a few more rounds of presentations into this bid. What is their timeline? What is their budget? This is really not a bad question. What is your budget? You should ask that. It's not, I know it's scary, right? And I'd say 25% of the chance they'll answer, but it's a good question to ask, because 25% is still good to know that, okay, this is the budget. And if they don't know the budget, you talk to them before you put pen to paper or before you write it on write a proposal. Always try to talk about numbers beforehand. Designers hate that. Okay, so here's my big thing that people hate. Don't bill hourly. Pretty much ever. Because hourly makes you a vendor. It makes you think that they can call you every minute of the day. They do the math. Like if you say, I spent, they argue with you. They'll say, why did you spend 50 hours on this? Should have taken you 10 minutes, Stay away from those arguments. You are value. You're based on years of experience. They're buying your experience and your expertise, not your time. So it's really, for the most part, there are some exceptions, and we can get into that. Don't charge hourly. It's a bad, bad thing. Always meet with clients personally before writing the proposal to pre-qualify. Because what you want to do is increase your win rate. You want to win more proposals. And a lot of times people write proposals for no reason. They were never going to get the project in the first place. So pre-qualify yourself and the firm and the project. Always meet with them in person. Build relationships. So once you've written the proposal, as much as you can, try to meet with them in person to review it. Don't just email to them and wait till they call you. Say, I'm going to send you the proposal tonight, but can we meet tomorrow at 10 a.m.? Or whatever it is. Let's schedule a time so I can review the proposal. If they're a client that's not local, can we schedule Skype? Or can we schedule a call so I can review it? Try to do it even in person. I love Skype. You can do everything just one-to-one. You can see body expressions. You can see if they're saying, rolling their eyes. It's a really important thing. So as much as possible, try to present your proposals in person, because that's going to increase your win rate. You have to be 100% confident. This is not for weenies here. You absolutely have to believe in what your price is, what your strategy is, what your proposal is saying. If you do not believe in yourself, the client is going to find that out and really play with that. So whatever number you give, you have to be 100% confident. You have to know this is the number I need and I deserve and I want and this project is valued at. Because the minute they detect any kind of waving, they're gonna believe me. They'll negotiate you down. Don't make assumptions. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to talk about new, apparently. It's supposed to be new business. Sorry about that. Okay. Stop doing this design stuff. These designers love to do this. What they call new business. Oh, I'm working on my website right now. Oh, how long have you been working on your website? Oh, 2 years. That's not new business. New business is building relationships, meeting people. Yeah, you need all this stuff. I'm not going to say you don't need a website, you don't need to tweet. You do need to do all that stuff. I definitely do. But designers just love spending hours and hours on designing their case studies or writing their positioning strategy and writing their case studies. That's really important stuff. Again, I don't want to say it's not, but not at the risk of building businesses. So really, you should be out there getting new clients. That is pretty much everybody's job. If you own a business, your job is to bring in business. Not anybody else's job. It's your job. So that means building relationships. So stop focusing on designing your website or what my tagline should be or should I change my name? You know, I get that a lot. You know, because everybody has their name in their firm. And they're like, oh, maybe it's that's what's causing me problems. It's not that. It's you're not out there talking to people. Okay. Oops, didn't work. Okay, so you heard me say this. Basically, I really believe that if you're in business of design or creative, you should be marketing yourself. You should be confident in who you are, proud of who you are, and talking to people. Should be every one of you should be talking to each other right now, no sitting in the corners like I was just doing over there. But you really should be networking as much as possible with everybody, anybody you know. You should be selling yourself, but not hard sell. You know, like, do you ever join? When I first started my business, I joined like executive women business. You know, and you go to those little like networking meetings, and everybody's handing out their cards. Not that. You know. Do you ever go to those places where they like? I remember one time I went and there was like a woman who was doing gift baskets, and I'm like, no, I don't know. It was just stay from that. You know, I don't believe in those networking groups. You really should just be going to conferences, go to events that your clients will attend. So read magazines, read newspapers, go to trade shows, go to conferences that that your clients are attending, so that you can start networking with potential clients. Not with just designers. I think AIJ is a fantastic organization. I've been very active. For me, it's good because that's my target audience. But for you guys, it's really good because you're networking with people and you're learning. So that's really good. But you also have to be out there with clients. Very, very important. Okay, so this is the big thing. You know, designers really they really worry about their number all the time. Like, what is that price? And I always try to say, look, don't worry about that. Let's talk about everything else first. Because they get so scared about that price. And if the client loves you, truly loves you, and that's what your job is, to get them to love you. If they trust you and they love you, they will say to you, you're not charging enough. They will. I know you don't believe me, but they will. Or they'll say, you're charging too much. How can we work together? So you're going to build client advocates so that the price is not as important. Yes, the price is important, especially in relationships where we're bidding against lots and lots of firms, but you shouldn't be doing those anyway. You should be focusing on those relationships you've already built where they trust you, they love the work, they know you're fantastic, they've heard about you, you've spoken to you've acted as an expertise, you've positioned yourself as the person that knows their industry, and then they're going to trust you and pay whatever you need to, they're going to pay you the value that you're worth. And they're going to tell you if you're too much or too little. They really will. I have clients that call me pretty much once a week. I'll get a client say, we didn't charge enough. The client told me that. That's great. And that's because the clients love you. So relationships are really, 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 really important. It's not about the price. So stop focusing on the price. Focus on the relationships. Okay, so a lot of firms ask me, and I'm not a marketing expert, and I won't position myself as one, but what I believe in this relationship building. So I think the best way to get new business is to focus and start small. So I like to do what I call 10 points of contact. So every week, your goal should be, I need to make 10 points of contact. That could be taking a client out to lunch. It could be going to a conference and talking to a bunch of people. It could be just sending out 10 letters to 10 people that you would love to work for. Every week, just have a goal, or maybe it's 5. And then you keep following up with those 5 names or 10 names. And eventually, that will lead to business. So if you just are very focused every week, you spend time building relationships and have a target of how many contacts you want to make in a week. Every year, every 6 months, I write a business plan for my business, and I write, who are these amazing designers out there that I'd love to work with? I just write it down, put it out there in the universe. And within 2 years, I'm usually working with every single one of them because I've written it down. I've tried to identify who they are because I love them. I think they're super talented or they have a great business model. And then when I'm at conferences, I try to meet them. Or I try to network with them through people I know. So most of my clients will know somebody else who I know who I'd love to work for. I say, can you introduce me? So that's what you want. You want to do the same thing, but for your industry. So I really believe in this. Sometimes it takes a while, but it does work. I just covered like high-level stuff. I can talk about any of these topics for hours and hours. So if you guys have questions or arguments or debates or personal issues you want to talk about. Okay, I can't see you, but okay, go ahead.
You talked about not billing hourly.
Yeah.
Do you have to, that's how you figure out how much you should be charging? Like you sit down and you think about how long a project is going to take you,
Yeah.
and then you know what your billable rate is, like how much you need to make per hour.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that was a big thing, and it went by really fast.
I know, because I know everybody's going to argue about that one. Okay.
No, I would love to know.
Yeah.
But I just don't know what my alternatives are.
Yeah, oh, there's a lot of alternatives. So, okay, the first thing is there's a gut instinct, right? You meet this client, you're like, okay, I know the number. It's in my head. It's in my heart. That's usually the number.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first thing. It's a gut instinct that comes over years of, more and more experience. The more comfortable you are, it gets to confidence. Yeah, you can do the math. You can figure out, okay, I'm spending 10 hours on the concepts and 5 hours in meetings. But that takes too damn much time, and it never works out that way anyway. So I really don't believe in those timesheets. I don't believe in those worksheets. You just figure out, okay, it's 3 months, and I'm going to be working 20 hours a week, and my hour rate's $100 an hour, and that equals to blah, blah, blah number. Just do it in big chunks. Don't break it out because, you get really caught up in that. Just figure out overarching how many hours you need of all different types of people. So if you have junior people, or different, freelancers, or strategic alliances that you need to build in, you definitely want to do the math to figure out if you can cover your costs. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I believe in profit, believe me. I love profit. But ultimately, you have a number. You should also be talking to your friends. So if you have a friend that has designed another restaurant and you're designing a restaurant, talk to them and say, how much did you charge? So it's really about sharing numbers. Everybody should be talking to each other. You should be learning from your friends. That said, you shouldn't be a user. One of my clients only designs restaurants, and she gets called by every designer who she's never met asking her how much she charges. That's ridiculous. So, you really absolutely have to talk to people. This is what I love about these groups. I love that Tina's doing this. A lot of groups are doing this across the country. You should be all talking to each other. You should get a network of friends talking about pricing. It shouldn't be not in the shadows anymore. But pricing is really a gut instinct. It really is. And eventually you'll get to it. Yes, you have to make money, so you should do the math. I'm not saying you shouldn't. But what I try to say is hourly rates are for you only, internally. You should have hourly rates. I'm a big believer in hourly rates because you ultimately need to track your time, which is what's really good about the program that's sponsoring today, FreshBooks. But that should be internal. So you track your time, and you should have timesheets. I believe in timesheets. I absolutely believe in tracking your time, including the principals of the firms. I always love this. I go to design firms, and they're like, oh, yeah, we do time tracking. And then I'll ask the principal, can I see your timesheet? Oh, I don't do that. So everybody time tracks, including billable and non-billable people. So at the end of every project, or even during the project, you want to see if you're making profit. So that's really important. But the clients don't need to know about that, because the clients are going to treat you like a vendor. The minute they know your hourly rate, they're going to figure it out. And this is about confidence. So if you price something at, I always love this, $5,750. That's a ridiculous number because it shows to the client that, first of all, you're not confident, and it shows that you're thinking hourly. So say it's $6,000. Just round off that number. It'll be a much easier sell for clients. Try not to show that you're thinking hourly Because the minute they do, the minute they see that, they're going to work off of you. Oh, well, that shouldn't take that long. It's a 2-week project. Why is it taking you 400 hours or whatever it is? You don't want them to have that debate. You want to have the debate about, is the concept meeting their business needs? Does that answer your question? A very long answer to a short question.
I think that helps. I think it's about, it's about finding the right clients, right? Because you just showed that video.
Yep.
So I have a client and I say the price is 65, and they say, well, we've never paid anybody any more than 35.
Right.
Maybe go up to 4,000. Where there's a discrepancy.
Right.
Do I walk away?
Well, this is a lot about if you've written the right proposal. So you have to very detail your scope of work. So if they lower their fee, then you lower the scope of work. Well, can we cut out around a revision? Or the other thing you do is say, I know this is really hard for you guys, no. Right? How many of you have fired a client? That's actually pretty good. Every one of you should fire a client once a year. I'm not joking here. You all should fire a client once a year. There's always going to be clients that you've outgrown that don't pay you enough, that are wonderful, but they still have been paying you out, when you were a student. You have to let go of those people. It's really okay. Any other questions?
Actually, that was my question. I was going to ask, when do you know you should fire the client? When do you know the difference between when you can fix it and when you should just walk away?
That's an easy one. When they drive you crazy. It's like, if they curse at you, that's a clear one. For me, okay, everybody has different issues that drive them crazy. As you can tell, I talk really fast. So the thing that drives me crazy, and the reason why I don't work with certain clients, is they talk slowly. That's when I fire a client. So everybody has whatever is going to drive them crazy. You have different tolerances. So whatever the red flags are for you, if you keep me on the phone forever, I'm not going to work with you. I just don't have time for that. If you can get to the point and tell me exactly what you need, I'm going to give you the exact answer. So it might be price for you. It could be a relationship. I have one client, I kid you not, who does not work with divorced women. She has a rule. She thinks divorced women really just got a lot of money from their divorce and they don't know what to do with it and they're starting a business. So she's learned from years of experience. Everybody has different things, and I support that. I think it works for her, so go ahead. So every one of you is going to have different things. I could tell you stories forever. Okay, other clients? Questions? Oops. Okay, let me do it because I pointed to you first, then I'll do you next.
So I'm just interested in knowing what led you to shift the focus of your career from being a graphic designer
Yep.
to being a consultant and business person in different settings.
Good. Tina actually and I were talking about that before. I really believe in following your passions. Like, who are you? What do you love to do? And so I was a designer. I was working in a design firm. I worked in in-house environment. I worked in a magazine, and I worked magazine and corporate environment. And I started realizing in the last environment, I was working at a company that was super creative. Like, these people were amazing. They were doing amazing work. And I was like, I can't do that. I didn't have it in me. And I realized that, and I'm super ambitious. Type A personality. I'm like, I needed to be the best at what I am, and I'm not going to ever be the best designer. So I looked at my heart, and I asked everybody I knew, I said, what do you think I'm good at? I asked my clients, I asked, people I worked with, and everybody said, you are so good with people, and people love you, and you're really good at managing people, and you're really good at writing, which freaked my parents out. And so I thought, well, what is that? And this is 20 years ago. I'm a little older than you. And the business of design didn't exist when I started. It really didn't. There was not a lot of people in the business of design. And so I thought, that's what I want to do. So I created a position. I called myself a studio manager. That didn't exist 20 years ago. And I went to firms and I said, you need me. And I did. I went to the deaf. I went everywhere, big famous firms and little firms, and I said, you need me. And I created a job for myself. Somebody hired me with no experience. I had no experience doing this. And then the word spread, because AIJ is just one big incestuous group. We're all sleeping with each other. And so I got clients like immediately. It was the weirdest thing. I built a consulting practice. Everybody's like, you like writing proposals? What are you, nuts? You know, and still I get to stay in design, so it was perfect. So that's what I did. I just created my business, and now a lot of people do what I do, which I think is great. And now I think a lot of the younger generation love the business of design, or at least, I don't know if love is the strongest word, but they appreciate the value of business of design, which a lot of people in my generation didn't at the time. So it's been a really great ride. I really love what I do. I really love what I do. I actually like writing proposals. Who knew?
When I do proposals up until now, I've always had like this rate for projects, and I usually included like extra work is in this much per hour, work area is this much per hour. But with what you just said, that kind of makes sense. But how do you broach that? You just say extra work will kind of cross everything and get to it.
Oh. Sorry, you know, I should be repeating people's questions. I'm sorry. So now I'll remember to repeat the questions, which is, okay, if we work hourly, if we don't work hourly, and they need scope creep, basically you're asking about scope creep. What do you do? So scope creep, you tell them. So when it happens, when they're expanding the scope of work, you call them up and you say, look, this is an additional round of concepts that we didn't include. Let's go back to the proposal. And you can see that I was not going to present more than 3 concepts. But you know what? I really understand why you need this concept. I'm going to throw it in. I'm not going to charge, but then the next time I will. So then you've already set the stage to say, I'm wonderful. I'm giving you all this stuff for free. But you've also set the stage for say, okay, but next time I have to charge. So it's really about communication. I think this is where I always talk about, you know, the fish stinks from the head up, head down. Sorry. I wonder what that meant. So you gotta have communication with clients. Clients just want to know that these things are happening. So designers always tell me, I did all this free work, and damn it, they're not paying for it. I'm like, did you tell them? Did you tell them you were doing all this free work? Just tell them that you're doing all this stuff for free, and now you need to charge, and warn them. And always get their approval before you incur fees. And everybody says to me, I don't have time. I have to do the revision. They asked for it at 5 o'clock, and it's due tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Tell them. Say, it just takes 5 minutes in an email. Say, I'm going to do this for you, but it's going to be this fee, because you have to hold it over their head. If you've done it and completed it and then charge it, they're not going to pay for it, because you already handed it to them. You need that kind of like carrot.
So if it's an hour, I charge $100, and necessarily say it's been an hour of my time.
Oh, okay, so how do you charge in terms of financial? Okay. It's 2 different ways. So if it's design concept, it's a percentage of the fee. So if you charge let's say $6,000 for 3 concepts, I'm just making up numbers here. Don't write down $6,000. If you charge $6,000 for 3 concepts and they need 1 more, you charge $2,000. So it's just a mathematical, really it's that. It's not an hourly thing. The only time you can charge hourly is for purely non-value services, like type changes. You know, but the minute that type change makes a rewrap or a revised design, that's not type change anymore, that's design change. So I try to stay away from hourly conversations. Just say, and this is about confidence, this revision was $500. Okay? Okay, one more question. Randy?
Points of contact we talked about. You mentioned meeting clients lunch, the letters, what other advice do you have in there?
Just being nice. You know, what? Oh, repeat the question. Okay, so the 10 points, I'm sorry, 10 points of contact. What are the things that you can do? What are other points of contact? It's really anything you want. It's calling them up on the phone. It's, you know, if they're pregnant and they're due any minute, calling them up, how are you feeling? When are you due? Sending them a gift. I mean, that's a point of contact to me. Staying in contact with people. If you meet with them and they're harried because of a trade show, call Ed the day after the trade show and ask them how it went. You know, if you see an article about something that they think will be inspiring, send them copies of articles. That's a point of contact. It's nurturing. Every time I see an article, I read Fast Company, like cover to cover. And I'm telling you, I'm ripping out articles right and left and giving them to my clients. And they love that I'm thinking about them. You know, I'll say, oh, I saw it. I was in, like, the airport the other day, and I was reading one of those, you know, airport magazines in the airline. And I saw an article about a particular industry that my client was going into. And I'm, like, cutting out that article and sending it to my client. You know, that's a point of contact. It's really just nurturing every relationship you can. It's building, it's not mailing lists. You know, it's really making one-to-one contact. It can be anything you want. No more questions? Okay. One burning question. No?
Are you available?
Not until after the new year, I have to say.
This is a very brilliant question.
Yes.
I don't know about you, but I don't know too many people on the planet who are always truly 100% confident. How about acting 100% confident?
You have to believe it. So if you are believing it, you know that acting style where you have to live. What's that acting style? You have to actually believe what you're doing. Yeah, that one. Do that. So you know, yes, you can't be confident at everything, but if you own a business, you should be confident in the value of your services and how much you charge. If you are not confident in either of those things, you're not in the right business. Honestly. You know, if you question yourself, your client's going to know that, even if you're acting. Thank you.